Welcome to the Diabetes Revolution podcast with Dr. Sarah Townley, the type 2 diabetes coach, clinical pharmacist, and mom of 7 angels. You don't have to struggle and fight with your blood sugars for the rest of your life. I'm here to teach you the skills you need to control and even reverse this disease. There is such a thing as getting off your meds and creating a future free from diabetes. And you can have it too. Let's get down to business. Well, hello, my friends. It's just been a crazy summer, guys. I mean, why would that be? You know, I have 7 kids. It's not that bad, right? We've had a lot of fun this summer. I don't know if I don't remember if I told you all before the summer got rolling that I was going to be very intentional to make sure that I had a great summer, because last summer I just got beat up. I didn't enjoy it and it was pretty stressful. So I made sure that I had some kind of game plan coming into this summer to make sure that we had tons of fun. So that's what we've been doing, is just busy having fun. I mean, there are days where we just stay home, but every week we're going and doing something fun. And I kicked off the summer with a 4-week road trip to Florida. I drove my van with 7 kids all the way from Montana to Florida. We went to Jacksonville, which is where my husband and I met and lived until we got through pharmacy school. And so we have tons of memories there. And my mom came down. My husband flew in and out because he doesn't get, the luxury of the time that I have with the kind of amazing job that I have coaching people like you. So we, just did the VRBO thing and enjoyed a lot of time at the beach. We went to Ginny Springs. It was a beautiful time. It was difficult. I mean, it wasn't easy. And I would say it half was awesome and half sucked, but it was still better than staying at home and trying to, not be miserable every day in a house full of kids. So that's just kind of how you have to get your mind right and ready before you take a road trip with a bunch of kids. And I did successfully do that. So the fun was worth it. I think I can say that already, which I think is awesome. We've also been doing a bunch of camping in the Bighorn Mountains, which are in Wyoming. That has been an interesting set of reflections there. I'm still not sure if tent camping is better than camper camping. I'm still sorting that out, but overall, it's been nice to be in the mountains with the kids, fishing and playing in the water and cliff jumping and all of that. And I will update you on some things that I told you about last time that I saw you. The house hasn't sold yet. And that's okay. Maybe we're supposed to do something different. We're kind of exploring different options, but for now we're still in our house until we're not, Our dog Mabel, our golden retriever, is expecting puppies in about 4 weeks. So that's really exciting. And we're looking forward to that very much. I really enjoy how when she has puppies, because she's had a litter before, that it's like, people come to my house and they just fall in love in my living room with these puppies. And it's actually so much fun. I had no idea how much fun it was going to be until we had our first litter. But she just, puts these puppies out and so many people fall in love and love just expands. And I noticed that in my family too. It's just kind of neat to watch that happen. And so we're excited about that. And then this next school year, because school's, getting close to starting, I decided to homeschool 2 of my kids out of the 5 that are in school. And so that's a big project that we're working on. But before we jump into the topic for today, I wanted to update you on, I'm pretty sure I told you about the competition that I was in to lose body fat percentage with my client. And so I didn't want to leave you hanging in case you were wondering how that went. I did win, by the way. Let's just make sure everybody knows that. No, I'm just kidding. That wasn't really the place where I got the most satisfaction from. It's not as satisfying to me to win a competition as just the process of progress is for me. So results, dun, 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 dun. I lost 1.5% body fat over those 3 months. So I came down to 27.5. And I gained 0.7 pounds of muscle in my arms, 1.1 pounds of muscle on my legs. I just think that's really fun. My visceral fat, the fat underneath my muscle in my abdominal cavity, fell 60%. So it went from 0.62 to 0.23. And my bone density went up 30%. That was really neat. I wasn't expecting to look at that, but when that was reported out, I was pretty jazzed about that. I think that's cool. Because, I'm building muscle for lots of metabolic benefits, but I forgot that I would probably gain some bone density. So I thought I'd share that with you in case that gets you really excited. Overall, my weight was almost exactly the same from start to finish, and I think that's really important for today's topic. We're going to come back to that. But since then, that was back in May, I've been building more and more muscle and, quote, getting ripped, according to my kids. When I'm covered in sweat and even sweating from my eyes, aka crying, during my home workouts, my kids always say flattering things to me. It really does help. I laugh at that because I'm a coach, but when my kids say really nice things to me that encourage me when I'm working out, it gives me such a boost. For example, my 7-year-old said to me when I was dying doing some RDLs with some pretty heavy weight, "Mom, you are literally the strongest person I have ever met in my whole life. Are you stronger than a kangaroo?" Nothing like that to get you smiling through the pain. And there's something that I've witnessed through this process that has been enlightening for me. And I was sharing it with one of my beloved clients yesterday. I told her that for so many years, I was deep into low carb, high fat, intermittent fasting for up to 3 days a week, pretty consistently. And I would always come back to this between babies because it really worked well for me to shed those extra body fat pounds that came on with the baby. But as I've aged, I noticed that I really had to up my game to get good results. I'm now 42, and I got to the point of feeling somewhat burnt out with the rigor of my routine, so I decided just to switch it up. Around that time, I was also becoming really interested in longevity benefits that come with building muscle. And I actually did a podcast on this earlier this year, so you can go back and listen to that. But fast forward, now I'm in this completely different physical state of building, where in the past, I was constantly inducing this state of catabolism, breaking down and burning body fat, right? While also I was incorporating plenty of exercise to stay fit and to stay toned. But I believe as time went on that I was slowly losing muscle, as women do with aging. Now I'm in a state of anabolism, building and growing. This has dramatically affected my metabolism. And I now eat every day, several times a day, using intermittent fasting for about 14 to 15 hours per day usually, and maybe up to like a 22-hour fast once every couple weeks if I need a reset and I'm not hungry. But generally, I'm pretty hungry, guys. I'm eating carbs in large amounts relative to my previous food plan. So I'm eating something like 150 grams a day right now, along with, moderate healthy fats and over 175 grams of protein daily. And I combine this with 10,000 steps or more a day, as well as 5 intense strength training sessions per week on average. And I don't share this with you to have you compare yourself to me, but just to give you an insight into what's possible if you build muscle. Now, many of my clients come to me sick on medication, feeling really exhausted, and don't have the energy to exercise regularly. And I get that. And it's totally understandable. In the beginning, we really need to focus on correcting blood sugars, calming that inflammation, and feeling better. But once you find your rhythm and your energy is returning and you can start bringing in some exercise, and that can really help heal the insulin resistance and begin to build the lean mass that burns up the glucose in the bloodstream. Muscle mass is the furnace of your body. So more muscle will burn more energy even when you're sleeping, when you're doing nothing. And don't forget, muscle stores glucose in the form of glycogen. So if you have a healthy amount of lean mass, you're going to see more tolerance for carbs in your diet because the muscle's just literally going to soak it up like a sponge and store it for exercise fuel. That's pretty neat, huh? Then the glucose isn't just hanging out in the bloodstream waiting for you to burn it or store it. Okay, so let's switch gears here and get to the subject of this podcast. It's funny because, I believe that God or the universe, however you like to think about it in your spiritual life, brings me information or opportunities in patterns. So I try to do my best paying attention for those. And over the last week, I had 3 people bring me this question: why can't I lose weight? And it might also have been in the context of faster, like it's been a slow, painfully slow process. And I think we can all relate to this if you've ever been on a weight loss journey. Sometimes it just feels like it's taking forever, and our minds can get frustrated, can feel impatient, and eventually hopeless because the mind's believing it's not working and it's not possible. And that's usually when we quit. We might ask for help. We might get weight loss surgery or take Ozempic, and we might eat donuts in the bed, right? So when Duffy reached out to me last week through my website, which, by the way, I love it when you all do this, and shared her similar struggle with me, I saw a need to address this topic with my community as a whole. So this is what she said in her email, and I'm just going to read it to you. Love your podcast and understand it very well. I'm a 67 years old retired nurse, currently 282 pounds, down from 307, a 25-pound weight loss since May 1st. I was diagnosed a month ago and refused medication, telling her I wanted to fix the cause, not medicate it. She reluctantly agreed. My test results, A1C of 9, fasting glucose was 223. This past week, my average fasting glucose in the AM was 145. So it's definitely coming down. I believe a large part of that number is the dawn effect because I'll eat around 11 a.m. and the postprandial checks average 128 over this past week. I did do a 108-hour water fast, 2 weeks ago to help reset my body and get a jump start in the process. My question: is it taking longer to lose weight because I still have so much sugar in my blood? I'm on a strict keto the last 30 days, using test strips so I know I'm in ketosis. I've absolutely cut all sugar, flours, processed food, and eating low-carb veggies. My net carbs stay under 20 a day. The last time I did keto, several years ago, the weight fell off fairly quickly. I'd like to understand the science as to why it's coming off so slowly this time. I'm thinking it's because my glucose levels are still so high and there's still plenty of sugar that my body is using and not using the fat yet. I would appreciate an answer and maybe a podcast to address that question. I look forward to hearing from you. Then the next morning, I woke up to an email from another of my beloved clients asking why her weight loss has stalled. She said, "I hate this." I know, right? LOL. So today, I want to break this question down and really help you pinpoint what the culprit could be so that you can feel inspired to try something different that could get you moving toward your healthy, empowered future. I think the first thing we should address before we get into practical understanding and tools is perception. Why? Because I just spoke with a client 2 days ago who was not seeing that a 2.5 pound weight loss over the last week was progress worth celebrating. Sure, 2.5 pounds held up against a desire to lose 50 pounds may not feel like much, but boringly and consistently, seeing a 5% improvement week after week would add up to 50 pounds gone in 20 weeks, or about 5 months. And for my clients, how many chronic diseases and medications are going to disappear in that 5 months? We're talking about things not just diabetes. We're talking about hypertension, bowel problems, heartburn, depression, high cholesterol, fatty liver, on and on. But you can only realize these life-changing results if you can stay in the game. So if you have, quote, only lost 5 pounds in the last month, are you still in? Are you still going to show up for your future? If it takes you twice as long as you hoped it would, are you still going to keep doing what is working, even if it feels slow to you? Please, please look at your trends. Don't just base your perception on what the scale said this morning or this week. And if you can also track and trend other data besides the total body weight on the scale, it will help you look at the bigger picture, right? Like, look at the results I shared at the beginning of this podcast. My weight was the same from beginning to end, but my body composition changed significantly. So measure your waist, your hips, anything you want to track. Track your blood sugars, and your CGM, if you have one, like a Libre, will give you amazing insights into your blood sugar trends over time. 7-day average, 14-day average, 30-day, 90-day. Time and range is also available. You can take stock of medication requirements. You can check your blood pressure and track that. You can track sleep quality. The more data you track, the better, because this is about your health, not some arbitrary number that means nothing until you judge it as good or bad. So to recap, what I want you to do if you think you're not making progress is to ask, is it true? Is it true that I'm not improving at all? If the answer is yes, then now we can identify what could be causing the stall and then what we can change. The next thing that I find is important to look at is how well we are doing the basics. Sometimes we can get caught up in trying more advanced strategies and get sloppy with our foundation. I know this is true for me. So let's go through a quick checklist of the things that are powerful but very basic that we need to have locked down before we try to build on top. Number 1, have you eliminated most or all sugar and flour? Or I call them refined carbohydrates. These refined carbohydrates are spiking your blood sugar and your insulin levels, and they cause inflammation, which worsens insulin resistance. Number 2, have you eliminated inflammatory oils? So the easiest way to know what I'm talking about is to know the ones that are safe. So safe oils would be olive oil, coconut oil, and avocado oil. There's also butter and ghee. If it's not one of those 5, it's probably an inflammatory oil. And you're going to find these in almost every packaged ultra-processed food product out there. One of the easiest ways to get rid of these is just to stop eating prepackaged, pre-made, ready-to-consume products. Eat real food, right? These inflammatory oils sustain body-wide inflammation, and they can even be stored in the body and cause chronic inflammation. Number 3, have you stopped snacking completely? Keeping your food intake to discrete meals helps avoid overeating and allows opportunities for fat burning to happen between your meals. Number 4, are you staying hydrated and pooping every day? The easiest way to gauge your hydration is by the appearance of your urine. Unless you take supplements or meds that affect the color of your urine, you can just aim to keep it a light straw color. That's a pretty reliable way to gauge that you're getting enough water. There are many ways to support a daily bowel movement, including adequate plant fibers, probiotics, and certain supplements such as magnesium and psyllium husk. It's important to keep all channels of elimination flowing when you are encouraging your body to break down and release body fat. Toxins are harbored in our fat stores, and your body needs to feel safe to expose your entire system to these, so flushing well is imperative. Number 5, are you getting adequate sleep to keep your body out of survival mode? Prioritizing rest helps regulate your cortisol levels. If you struggle with sleep, I completely understand. This is one thing that can greatly improve when you stabilize your blood sugars. Beyond that, there can be many tools to help with this that we can explore in another podcast, but at least making sure you're giving yourself the opportunity to get at least 7 to 8 hours per night in your schedule. That supports weight loss. Setting a clear bedtime if you tend to be a night owl, and getting up every day at the same time, regardless of weekends, is a must first step. Okay, those right there are the basic foundational requirements of any healthy weight loss plan. If you are checking all of these off right now in your mind, we can look at some of the more advanced concepts that might provide possible solutions. So outside of the odd circumstance that could be blocking the body from expected weight loss, which we will get into at the end of this podcast, a true stall in body fat reduction is a product of the body not needing to burn stored energy. Remember from a previous podcast where I described the concept of oxidative priority? This concept explains the order of energy sources that your body utilizes according to its design. In summary, your body has 2 fuel tanks in the bloodstream to pull from to supply sources of energy. There's blood glucose, and then there's blood fat, or triglycerides, that are further broken down into ketones. The blood glucose has a backup tank called glycogen that is found in your liver. The blood fat is backed up by body fat. So your body prefers to use glucose first, but remember, it will never burn blood glucose down to 0, right? At some point, your body determines blood glucose is getting low, and I've seen this be relative to what your body's used to. And when it feels like it's getting low, it will release glycogen to keep glucose levels in a safe range. When glycogen gets low, your body switches over to fat burning. This takes an average of around 12 to 16 hours to happen after your last meal. But for those of you eating low carb, you're not really topping off your blood glucose or your glycogen with every meal, right? So you can usually get into ketosis faster, meaning you're burning fat as a primary fuel source. Now, if you eat a lot of dietary fat, which is common on a keto diet, you may have a very full blood fat fuel tank. So it will take a while to burn that down low enough to start dipping into your body fat. See how this works? It makes sense. You will not need to dip into body fat if you have sufficient glucose, glycogen, and blood fat to supply your body's energy needs. So let's go back to Duffy's email. She's noticing that she's not losing weight as fast on a keto diet as she did years ago. Blood sugar is not bad, but higher than normal, so there could be a few different things going on. Blood sugar is high, so this fuel tank seems to be full enough to supply energy to the body without moving on to fat as a fuel source. Because she is checking her urine ketones, she's sure that she is in ketosis. So in fact, she is still breaking down and burning fat even with blood glucose levels higher than normal. I see this all the time with insulin resistance. The body is accustomed to higher blood glucose levels, and it perceives it's low relative to what it's used to, and switching over to fats before blood glucose is truly low. Remember that a person used to blood glucose in the 300 range may feel low and have overt signs and symptoms of hypoglycemia at, say, 150. Now, the second thing going on if blood sugar is high in a setting of insulin resistance is that insulin levels are typically elevated. And insulin's a hormone that directs the body to store fat and blocks fat liberation. This is why having insulin resistance makes losing weight more challenging. However, it is still possible to successfully liberate body fat when insulin's high. I've seen people on insulin injections lose significant amounts of body fat while reducing their insulin dose over time. So it can be done. It just may go slower, especially in the beginning. The last thing I would offer pertaining to Duffy's case is that because she's already seen a 25-pound loss in the last 3.5 months, which, by the way, is great and something to be proud of, we can be confident that what she's been doing is working. But maybe it's slowed down some and seems to be taking much longer than it did years ago. And that makes me think that she's nearing the point of meeting her daily energy demands with dietary fat, a form of energy. If Duffy has followed the typical trajectory of muscle mass loss for a woman, which, by the way, accelerates after menopause, and Duffy's now 67, right? Her metabolism has most certainly slowed down. That means she's not burning dietary energy as quickly as she used to. And with a keto diet that's heavy in fats, it would be expected that there might be less opportunity to need to burn stored body fat because there's plenty coming in through the diet. Does this make sense? This is where calories are important to factor in. A lot of people using low carb, high fat, including my past self, want to completely disregard calories. But once you play the game according to how hormones control weight loss and weight gain, at the end of the day, if your body doesn't need to burn stored energy, it won't. It will burn what you feed it first. This is very logical. And this is why I've evolved beyond low carb, high fat to a more protein-centered style of eating. I'm not saying that low carb, high fat isn't good or isn't effective, but it is totally energy focused, right? Low carb, high fat, these are just two forms of food energy. In the end, we need nutrition, and our diet should be centered around nutrition. So what is nutrition? We're talking about protein, fiber, and micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. If we emphasize these and de-emphasize energy, some really amazing things happen. Number one, we become satiated with less total calorie intake, and we stay full longer. Protein is by far the most satiating macronutrient we can consume. Number two, we supply the building block for muscle synthesis. So combined with some exercise, especially resistance training, we can increase muscle mass and strength, which greatly improves our condition both physically and mentally as we age. Number three, blood sugars stabilize. Don't believe the fear-mongering ketosis Nazis. Protein doesn't spike blood sugar because it is not converted to glucose unless you're starving the body of all the other macronutrients. This is a myth in our modern food paradigm. If blood sugar spikes with a protein-heavy meal, there is another reason for this that I can explain another time. But by and large, eating mostly protein and plant fiber will create very nice and stable blood sugar trends. You know, you might ask that question, like, what about fruit and starchy vegetables? These are abundant sources of energy, so that must be taken into account. I emphasize eating low sugar plant fibers. Okay, so we can see now that if you supply enough dietary energy, whether in the form of carbs or fats, to meet your body's daily energy demand, you're going to have difficulty with accessing stored body fat. So how do we overcome that? Well, it's pretty logical. You're either going to need to reduce your energy consumption or you're going to have to increase your energy demand. This being targeted after you support lowering your blood sugars and insulin levels and stabilizing your hormones through the basic foundational steps we've discussed. Here are some additional tools that can help achieve hormone regulation as well as reduce body fat. 1, avoid eating whole food carbs that spike your sugar more than 30 points after you eat them. So these would be things like rice, which, by the way, shoots me up like 80 points every time. Fruit, oatmeal, beans, root vegetables like potatoes and sweet potatoes, grains like quinoa. These are all whole food carbs that can spike you. So you'll have to test and measure which ones and how much you can have to avoid spiking you more than 30 points. 2, eat just to satiety. Stop overeating to the point of feeling full. This is challenging to do, guys. I'm still working on it. Especially when you get really good at cooking, things just taste good. It requires presence with your food and attunement to your body's satiety signals. I notice that I often want to eat for reasons that have nothing to do with feeling hungry. We're very habitual in preparing our plates, eating at certain times, in certain circumstances. And if you asked yourself at mealtime even, before you even take the first bite, like, am I even really hungry? You might notice you're not, or that it won't take very much for you to feel satisfied. Okay, the third tool that you can use would be to leverage fasting. I have 2 whole podcasts on this topic. Allowing your body to remain in a fasted state more often provides more opportunity to use stored energy like body fat. It is a highly effective tool to burn fat, but also to reverse insulin resistance, right? Okay, number 4, center all meals around lean protein and non-starchy vegetables. Shoot for at least 30 grams of protein at mealtime. If you can get up to 50 grams, you're knocking it out of the park. Okay, this might take you measuring your food, even weighing it, just to get an idea of how much protein you're consuming. This is a pretty eye-opening exercise. You don't have to do it forever, but at least you can learn to see and estimate about how much protein you're eating. You want to focus on lean. So we're talking chicken and turkey, fish, seafood, eggs, especially the whites, low-fat dairy like cottage cheese and Greek yogurt. For eggs, I go heavier on the whites. I do like 4 whites to 2 yolks. And sorry, friends, bacon is not lean protein. Darn it. This doesn't mean you can't have filet mignon either. That's actually a better choice than ribeyes, right? Because it's leaner. It just isn't going to be your go-to protein source. Watch the butter and the olive oil when you cook. It's okay to use them. Just don't drown your veggies and meats in them, right? Because every teaspoon of fat that you're eating is a teaspoon you won't be burning off of your stored body fat. Okay, number 5, I just threw in here. I forget about this one because I don't drink alcohol. But of course, a lot of people do. And so a 5th strategy that is absolutely important for people who consume alcohol frequently is to cut that out. It's interesting because we talked about the priority in which your body burns sources of energy. The very first one is actually alcohol. And I don't talk about that all the time because most people aren't drinking alcohol all the time. But when you do, it becomes the priority. Your body will entirely stop burning everything else and switch over to alcohol because it perceives alcohol as a poison. So it will focus on metabolizing and eliminating alcohol before it touches any other source of energy. So when you drink alcohol, you literally hit the pause button on burning glucose and fat. And until you eliminate all of the alcohol, that's going to be the priority for your body. I've heard some weight loss experts say that when you drink alcohol, it actually pauses fat burning for longer than a day. I just think that that's worth mentioning. The other thing that's really important to mention for people who are drinking is that alcohol is known to drive fatty liver disease, and people who have diabetes already have fatty liver disease. And so we don't want to be adding to the burden of the liver. We want the liver to be liberating body fat, not adding to the fat within the liver, and alcohol absolutely drives that. Okay. Last, I'll throw in the next absolute best tool you can add to all of this sage dietary advice, and that is walking. Walking is an amazing fat burning tool because walking is a low intensity form of movement. It is fueled almost entirely by fat. Now, you're going to see your blood sugars dive when you go for a walk, but mostly this activity is fueled by fat. The more, the better. Walking fasted, walking after a meal, walking outside in nature, walking and talking with someone that you love, walking and listening to me on my podcast. All walking is good walking. Get a Fitbit or some sort of step counter and let it create some awareness for you of how much you are or aren't walking. Yesterday, I was coaching one of my beloved clients, and she told me that she did get her Fitbit, and she was embarrassed to tell me that she's only averaging around 1,700 steps per day. And do you know what I said? That is great news. It was like a eureka moment, guys. What a fantastic opportunity that we found. And do you know what she was doing as I was coaching her? She was taking steps around her beautiful backyard. Awareness is powerful. You can't unsee what you see. When you know better, you do better, right? So her goal is not to dramatically increase her step count, like that would feel overwhelming. Instead, her goal is to gradually increase it by 100 to 200 steps per day. That feels doable to her. Isn't she so smart? I love her. Okay, I would be remiss not to mention some relatively uncommon but potentially problematic barriers to weight loss that should be considered if you're doing everything right and you're still not moving the needle. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here, but I will mention these to you at least so that you can investigate them for yourself if they feel relevant to you. So the first one is hypothyroidism. So many people with insulin resistance have an underactive thyroid due to a disease called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. That is actually an autoimmune condition, but it's super common. I want to say when I was in clinic seeing patients with diabetes every single day, I want to say more than half of them had Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism because of that. So if you have this already, it's important to have a full thyroid panel checked annually and anytime your thyroid replacement is adjusted. The thyroid is said to be the gas pedal of the body, so when you don't have enough active thyroid hormone in the body, everything slows down, including your metabolism. So if you aren't aware that you have this problem, you can still ask your doctor to check a full thyroid panel, not just a TSH, guys, to see if you're deficient. They need to actually measure the thyroid hormones, okay? A lot of doctors will just knee-jerk screen, and it's not enough information. Now, just because it's common for people to have hypothyroidism when they have diabetes doesn't mean they're not adequately treated for it, and doesn't mean that they are going to have this be an obstacle to weight loss, but it's good to just monitor it and make sure that you have enough thyroid hormone. And if you have any symptoms, that for sure is a red flag. Okay, second, are you stressed to the max? If you live a lifestyle that is stressful without adequate time to rest and recuperate, you could have abnormally high circulating levels of the stress hormone cortisol. This will make it difficult to lose body fat. Getting adequate sleep is a good start, but if you're always activated and on like fight or flight, learning how to regulate your nervous system to get out of perpetual survival mode will be important. You can have saliva cortisol levels measured by functional medicine providers in your area or even online if you're curious if this is your obstacle. Third and last, is your body inflamed? So inflammation drives insulin resistance and therefore weight gain. Many things can cause chronic inflammation. Some more common causes include things we eat, right? We've already talked about eliminating the sugar, the flour, the inflammatory oils, but you may have an unknown sensitivity to foods that you're consuming frequently. So if you're sensitive to dairy and you eat this anyway, despite, abdominal discomfort or rash, for example, your body will likely experience some inflammation. Eliminating common food sensitivity categories can be super enlightening. So even like a 10-day anti-inflammatory diet could reveal some valuable insights. These would be eliminating things like dairy, grains, and eggs. And you could also just eliminate all artificial sweeteners while you're at it. And then after that 10 days, you can start reintroducing these one at a time to see if you notice any unpleasant symptoms. There are some other things that can cause a state of chronic inflammation, like chronic infections, especially things like dental infections, chronic stress. There are some environmental toxins, things that we're putting on our body through our personal care products, pesticides, and heavy metals and things like that can also be causing inflammation. One simple way to check for widespread inflammation in the body is a blood lab test called CRP. It stands for C-reactive protein. And I ask all my clients to request this to be added to their annual routine labs if their doctor's open to it. Whew, okay. Do you see any potential explanations for why you aren't losing weight or why it's slower than expected? Whether it's your perception or your food plan or something else, I hope I've given you some insight into what you could change next to create some traction. If you love this podcast and would love me to make more on a certain topic, you can always send me your ideas. You never know, I might be reading your email to tens of thousands of people next. It might help a whole lot of people out there all over the world. Because if you're experiencing it, there's a really good chance others are too. And if you want more than just podcasts, if you want my personal attention, coaching you every week so that you finally free yourself from diabetes, get on my website and send me your application. And we can create a miracle in your life together now. I will see you on the next podcast. Remember that I love you. Okay, don't leave yet. You're going to want to hear about this. If you love my podcast, if I'm the only sane voice you've found on this subject, if I've already helped you, you need to check out my online course. It's a start to finish, step-by-step video course that teaches you all the tools you need to know to beat this disease. You can find it on my website, sarahtownley.com, along with lots of other free tools that will make taking care of your diabetes so much easier. So get over there right now. See you there.